And are we going to in the future, are we going to reach these new capacities of connecting without words and to traveling with less physical needs and other ways of connecting?
I think so. I did an interesting, to me, project, also using hypnosis and in groups. I did progressions, going into the future, instead of regressions, looking at the past. Now with more than 7,000 people. And I take large groups of people progressing, going into the future to 3 time periods. About 100 to 200 years from now, 500 years ahead, and 1,000 years or more in the future.
You will explain that in the next blog, okay?
In the future?
Yes, just in the small future. En un minuto hablamos del futuro con Dr. Weiss. Thank you. Well, now we are in the close future, since minutes ago. We are talking about progressions. How can we do progressions, and what is going to happen in our future lives?
Yes, because as physicists know, time is not an absolute constant. Einstein was right. Time is relative, and at some point it appears that maybe it even stops or slows down or disappears. So when I regress these thousands of people, or progress them, I still put them into the hypnotic state, but then I take them forward and I say, okay, now you're going through a door into 200 years from now, or 500, or 1,000. And at the end they filled questionnaires. I wanted to see if there was a consensus. Did they agree on anything? And I found that the most consensus, more than 80%, more than 80%, agreed in the far future, the 1,000 year. They saw a world that was very green and idyllic, beautiful, without wars, without violence, without illness, and people communicating telepathically. That's what you were asking me. And yet the population was much reduced. Many people told me about the existence of desert museums. That is, there were no more deserts on the planet, so they needed museums to show what deserts were. I never would have thought of this concept on my own. So, but the people told me in the questionnaires, and I was surprised many people did, but very, very commonly that the population was less, many fewer people. And it appeared that that happened in the middle period, about 400 or 500 or 600 years from now. Something to diminish the population. But what it is not set yet. Still, there seems to be free will there. In the 100 years from now,
100 years from now,
to 200, it was more of the same. Nothing, I didn't find a cataclysm. The world doesn't disappear in the year 2012 or 2020. There are disruptions, but we always bounce back. And something in the middle period happens, so, and we still have to decide what that will be to decrease the population. Eventually the world will be idyllic, beautiful. But that, more than 80% of people are describing that probable future. But is it benign what reduces the population? For example, to me the most benign way would be people decide to have fewer children because the planet doesn't need 10 billion people or 8 billion people. Maybe it only needs 1 billion. It can get along, use the resources better. The second most benign way is decline in the fertility rate. Maybe people can only have fewer children, not by choice, but because the fertility rate is diminished. This is already happening. By the way, already measurements are that the fertility rate in general is decreasing because of the toxins in the environment and other reasons. Or are we going to choose a more violent way? Wars, terrorism, plagues, illnesses, ecologic disasters, yeah. These can happen too, but Not for a while. We don't have to worry about this. Except if we've reincarnated 400 or 500 years from now, and now we're back and we're in the middle of this time. So my choice, since we probably will be reincarnating, and it will be us again and our soulmates, let's choose the most benign way. Let's just have fewer children.
Let's do it better. Let's do
Yes.
it in the best way.
The best way.
We'll meet again then, maybe, to talk about this.
Yes, but eventually we'll meet in the far future, and we'll say, what a beautiful world this is, how green. They describe people not living so much in cities, that cities have become smaller with much more green. And it's a simpler and yet very healthy way of life, and more meaningful. And still, diseases have been conquered. Industry is now taking place off the Earth's surface, outside. So there's no pollution here anymore.
How can we learn from children?
Well, children, to me, and I should say in the beginning that many children remember their past lives. We have thousands of cases of children without hypnosis, but spontaneously they remember past lives. But they tend to forget when they get to about 5 or 6 years old. So when they're 3 and 4 and 5, they're remembering, and then it starts to diminish and forget. Children can teach us because they remember. They
are closer.
They're closer. There was a book in English, it's called Everything I Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. Because and it's a very interesting book because it talks about how did we act in kindergarten. Well, we held each other's hands to cross streets or for safety. We helped each other. And we can see in children a simpler life, that it's not deceitful, it's not dishonest, it's very basic. And to me, this reminds me that it's not so complicated to be an adult. It's not so complicated in this world. Maybe we only need 4 things, which I think are education, health care. I'm being a politician again. Education, health care, housing, and food. So education, access to health care, medicines, and shelter, housing, and food for everybody. If everybody on the planet had those 4 things, this would be a much happier place. Fewer wars, no poverty. I think we can accomplish this if we really put our will to it. Healthcare, education, housing,
shelter, yeah.
yes, and food. So that we can learn
simple,
from children.
It's so ancient.
It's so ancient. And what do children need to be happy? These 4 things, and they play. And we don't play enough. We get too serious. We get too complicated. And we only need those 4 things. But we worry so much. So children can teach us to see life fresh, alive, spontaneous. We can learn those things. Children remember their past lives, many children, so they can teach us about those things too.
And when children meet or talk about invisible friends, are they talking about this?
Sometimes they are, and sometimes they're very important. I remember a mother who got in touch with me. She lived in St. Louis, Missouri, in the United States, and she was upset because her mother had died recently. And she had a young daughter, a little girl, and this was the little girl's grandmother. And they were very close. But the little girl did not seem sad. She wasn't depressed. She didn't seem to miss her grandmother. And this was very perplexing and a little frightening to the mother. So what happened was that one day the mother couldn't take it anymore. And she asked her daughter, came skipping down the stairs from her room, which was upstairs. She said, "What's wrong with you? Don't you miss Grandma? Aren't you sad?" And the child said, "No, I was just talking to her in my room. She's sitting in the chair." And then the child told the mother details about the mother's life when the mother was a child that only the grandmother knew. So you knew it wasn't a delusion. She was getting this information. But the mother thought something was wrong with the daughter because now she's hallucinating, takes her to a child psychiatrist who wants to start the daughter on medicine. So then she called me up and said, should I do this? Should she start on medicine? I said, no. She's having this experience. It's helping her, it's important to her, and she told you secrets from your childhood that only your mother knew.
Don't lose that opportunity.
Don't lose it. And I said, if it worries you so much, just say, that's nice, dear. Just, it will stop after a while. And it did. She didn't take her to the psychiatrist. I'm not against psychiatrists. I am a psychiatrist, but not in another way. Normal.
At what age you can start doing past lives therapies?
I've done this with teenagers. I've done this with teenagers. I don't do it with children because it gets complicated with the parents, and I'm not a child psychiatrist. I always have treated adults. But children make very good hypnotic subjects. You technically could do it with children. I don't even use hypnosis. I just talk to children sometimes, if the parent is agreeable.
Agrees.
Yes, and I say, do you remember when you were big? What was that like? Tell me about when you were big, if you remember anything. And the child will sometimes talk about things that are not imagination. And there are many researchers. In the United States, there's a famous psychiatrist named Dr. Ian Stevenson. He's very elderly now and retired, but he collected more than 2,000 cases of children with reincarnational memories. And he documented those cases, 2,000 documented, validated cases, where he would interview the other family or the old family or find evidence that it was correct. And it's very interesting. Children often remember.
More than us.
More than us. But now we're starting to remember also, more than we used to. I think because we need to remember now. The world is so dangerous. We need to progress spiritually as much as we are progressing technologically. And so now, for some reason, we're being allowed to remember our past lives in large numbers. We have to learn not to repeat mistakes that maybe we made in the past.
That's why we are here talking about this.
Yes, this is a great opportunity to present to many people 26 years of research, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity.
Thank you. We go on in minutes.
Sí.
Thank you. Ya volvemos con el Dr. Weiss. Can a soul, when it's in this intermediate state between one life and another one, appear to us in a shape, in something like ghost shape or something like that?
Yes, sometimes this is allowed if there's something that they need to tell us or to teach us. So if there is a need there, that can be allowed. And this is also somewhat related to when you die and you have before the life review, but you're going to the light, you can be greeted by a soul too, like someone who has already died, a grandmother, mother, whatever, whoever. But when they appear to you, they may not appear as they looked when they died. In other words, say that your grandmother died and she was 90 and frail and weak, and maybe her bones had deteriorated because of age, and she may appear the way she looked when she was 50, in a prime and healthy, because she can choose whatever shape to come back. She chooses that. And if there is a need, then the communication is allowed, because that's very important. Not everybody, by the way, gets that opportunity. If there's no need, no. And sometimes they come back because the energy is better with one person than another. It's not a measure of love. So, for example, sometimes one sibling may be experiencing a visit from a mother who had died. And then the sister or the brother says to me, do they love her more? And I say, no, it's not about love. It's just easier for her to adjust her energy to that person. It's not because she loves her more or less or anything. It's just easier to come through that person. And so you shouldn't get jealous if your sister gets the visit but you don't.
And what can we do during this present life to improve our capacity of being better or doing things better, to climb more steps in that way?
I believe that it's knowing ourselves better and our real nature. That if we remember that we're eternal beings, spiritual beings, that the soul is us, not the body. To use metaphors again, the body is like a car, and you're the driver. So when the car wears out, you leave. You don't die, you go on. If you need another car, you get another car. And you change. Sometimes you may have a Honda, and then a Buick, and then a Rolls Royce, and a Maserati, because you're changing. Black, yellow, red, white cars, whatever. The driver is the same, you're the driver. Remember that you're a spiritual being, that your task here is to learn lessons of love and compassion. So if you become more compassionate, even a little bit, more loving, less violent, then you're progressing. And the little bit will lead to more and more and more. And that's what we can do here. And not only that, then other people react to you differently. So don't let negative emotions get in the way. Not anger, that only gets in the way, it frustrates you. It's not useful. It holds you back. It hurts you more than the person you're angry at. Not frustration, there's all the time in eternity. Not sadness or depression or grief. You're immortal. You're eternal. You don't have to be so sad. Not anxiety, not worry. These only get in the way. You're a spiritual being. There's nothing to worry about. Not in the bigger picture. You can never be harmed at that level. So if you bring more love, more compassion into your everyday life, others are going to react to you differently. You're going to teach them. You'll be a model for them. And that's how this whole process can be accelerated, as we teach each other to be more loving, more compassionate, more gentle, more patient. That's what we have to do now. The world needs this.
Maybe all the religions were talking about this in different ways.
Yes.
But some of them make a little curve to deny some of these aspects.
Yes.
Why?
Well, so much of that is...
The interests in between the power of maybe.
Oh yes, absolutely. And some religions have worked on fear more, and
guilty and
guilt, yes, to keep people in line. But this is somewhat controversial. It's just my feeling, is that there's really only one religion, and that's love. Because that's the common denominator of all religions. So I agree with the Dalai Lama, who said, stay in your religion. You're familiar with that, you're comfortable with that. You don't have to change your religion. They all lead to the same place, which is love. And that's the important thing, because if you look at what the religions teach, it's about becoming more loving, more compassionate, more charitable. These are all different manifestations of love. So if we think, well, there's one religion, that's love. My religion teaches about love. Stay in it, but practice it, believe in it. Love doesn't mean that people from other religions can't find, the same things we're looking for. They're still immortal. All souls don't have religion. Souls are all the same. We change religion. I have done regressions myself, of course, because I wanted to experience what my patients experience. And I found that I was a Catholic priest in Scotland in the Middle Ages. I was a Muslim writer. I've been Jewish. I've been Buddhist. I've been Hindu. I've been everything. So who am I?
You're lucky. Because
but we all have.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the soul is the soul. The soul is love. That's the one religion. Yes, how we get to there's some variations like customs, and that's fine, that's beautiful, and it's very familiar. If it reminds you to be loving, to be compassionate, then you become the enlightened soul. then you become the master. And that's how masters have always appeared throughout time, to teach us this, whether Buddha or Jesus or Muhammad or Moses or other masters who come to teach us about love and model how to get there. It's not so complicated.
It's not.
No.
No. Well, thank you very much for coming to Argentina to teach us about this and to talk and to make us think about all of these subjects. And I know we'll meet again in this life or in another one.
Yes, and thank you, Boy, for this opportunity to reach so many people with my work and research, and I really appreciate that, because now we're in the 21st century, and this is how we teach.
Thank you very much. Ha sido una conversación con el Dr. Brian Weiss.